Hey there folks, everybody loves to carve Christmas, like this guy. But no Christmas scene is complete without a Christmas tree. Let me show you how to carve one using these. So this stencil is available in 3 sizes, 1.5, 2 inches, and 3 inches. And of course that refers to the width, not the height. So for the 3-inch version, it's roughly 6 inches. The 2-inch version is roughly 4 inches, and the 1.5 is roughly 3 inches. The cool thing is that this stencil is completely reversible. And these two I only carved on one side. However, on the 3-inch version, carved it on both sides, and you can see that I kind of separated the leaves right here. Kind of gives it a little bit more depth, more interesting features on there, so kind of do whatever it is that you want. Let's get to it. We're going to carve a 2-inch version today. Piece of wood like this. So you can see it's roughly 3/8 of an inch, maybe 1/4 of an inch wide, and exactly the height that it needs to be. So we'll trace it out and start carving. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just set our stencil down and go ahead and trace out that outline. So pretty much tracing out as much of the stuff as much of the stencil as we can see. And there it is. Okay, let's start carving. Alright guys, so I'm obviously just using a flex cut roughing knife. This is a fairly inexpensive knife, and the reason I use this is just to show you guys that you can accomplish these results with fairly reasonable and affordable tools. Enough said on that. Obviously I'm wearing protection gloves, so this one is supposedly cut resistant, although I've definitely been cut with a glove similar to this, and this is just a regular nitro coated glove, which obviously needs to be replaced, but this one gives me a little bit more grip on this knife handle. If you have a bandsaw, you could save some time and go ahead and cut the silhouette out with a bandsaw. I'm just going to go ahead and do it with a knife. With a piece this thin, it really shouldn't take very much time to be able to get those get the wood down to those lines. Okay, so that's exactly what we're going to do. Is we're going to take off all this excess material on the outside and get it down to these exterior lines. Oh shucks. Well, that happens. So that's okay. We'll just kind of incorporate it into there. So let's try and see. Okay, so that one will just be a little bit shorter. That's okay. So we're getting close to the line. You don't have to get exactly to the line, but remember that that stencil has some thickness, so don't shy away from the line too much. If you take some of it off, that's okay. Especially for this design that, you know, is highly forgiving. It's not like a face or something like that. It's definitely not a small piece, but yeah, if you're doing more than just, if you're doing something thicker than this, than 3/8 of an inch, I highly suggest you take it to a bandsaw to get it cut down and save some time, really. Especially if you're creating a bunch like for a show or to make a decoration or something like that, you know, save yourself some time. Use a saw. Even a coping saw would work. Let's try not to have a repeat of that other situation, so we're going to take this nice and easy. Okay, and we're going to take a different approach to these sections down here. First, we're going to clean this up a little bit more. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Okay, so for these sections down here, what we're going to do is we're going to outline it with our knife first. So come over here, and go light at first, and then come in and do it again a little bit deeper. Essentially, all we're doing is severing those fibers. Go like that. Yep. Excellent. And then let's do it for the trunk as well. And let's do the other side as well. What I do right here. Careful that you don't have your fingers behind it, because this is an excellent way for that knife to just slip, and it'll even make it through one of these gloves because you're putting so much downward pressure. You're essentially just using one hand to carve, which is probably the most dangerous way to do so. Okay, so now we're just going to relieve it down to that stop cut. That's essentially what we've done. So like that. A little bit at a time. So as you remove more and more material, come back and do more of a stop cut. See if we can do it without having another blowout incident like that. Okay. So this part is a little bit tedious, but it's just because we're cutting on end grain kind of in the opposite direction, so it's going to be like that. There we go, it's looking good. Let's clean up the rest of this side. So obviously the end grain pieces are going to be the ones that are going to be a little bit more challenging than the long grain. So long grain going from essentially this face right here is long grain, and then that is obviously end grain. You can see the difference in color. Whew, that took longer than expected. Anyway, so if you do have a bandsaw, I definitely suggest and recommend that you cut out the figure using your bandsaw. But sometimes, you know, people enjoy the meditativeness of cutting it with a knife. Okay, so you can obviously go around and clean it up a little bit closer to the line if you decide to. It's really up to you. And it's just going to change the shape of the Christmas tree just a little bit more. Okay, so now let's start shaping the rest of this tree. So now we got to do the interior lines, and so these lines are kind of meant to show that one leaf is going to fold under the other. So you can see this top one is going to fold underneath that one. This one's going to fold underneath that one. This one is meant to show that one like that. This one under that one, this one under that one. And then this one under that. And this one you just kind of choose which one goes where. the best tool for this job is going to be your V-tool. Just outline everything you can see. There you have it. So now we're going to give it a little bit more depth. So obviously we're going to be using our knife and scoring all of those V-tool lines. So we're going to come over here. I definitely suggest you place it on a flat surface like this so you can more easily score it, because if you hold it in your hand like this, trust me, what's going to happen when you get to this section right here and your fingers are on the back, this knife is going to slip and you're going to have a really bad day. So that being said, you could still use the middle of the knife and score the edges like that, right? Just kind of rock it back and forth. That should be okay, but yeah, just like that, you know? Let's see, this one goes right here. Okay, now all we're going to do is essentially chip carve. So we're going to start removing the leaves from underneath and creating some depth. So you may need to go back in there and rescore it a little bit every once in a while, but it just depends on how deep you want it to go. Right. So before we get too far along, let's go ahead and shape this top part and give it a little bit of curvature. So we're trying to get rid of the blockiness and kind of swoop it backward a little bit. Okay. And the same thing on these. Just going to shape them so that they look a little bit more natural. Now, of course, we're going to come back with the gouge and clean these up a little bit as well. So you don't need to do it all with a knife. In fact, this is a perfect opportunity to use a gouge. So two gouges that I recommend you have are a number 7, and this is about 3/8 of an inch wide, and you can go like this. Just kind of take it right up to those stop marks, up to those stop cuts. Or you can use a number 3. It's flatter than the number 7, obviously, and it's not going to leave those kind of wide gouge lines, or those narrow gouge lines, rather. It'll be wider. And you can also use it as a knife. You can go like that, take off those things. It depends, it depends on kind of the geometry that you're dealing with, but sometimes gouges are easier to deal with than knives, depending on how small the piece is. Right. But I think eventually you'll still have to go back to a knife at some point. Right here, let's tuck this leaf underneath. Same thing with this one. Let's tuck that one underneath. There we go. And over here. And there it is. And just do the same thing for the rest of the pieces down below. Okay, well that looks pretty good. And now to give it a little bit of texture, I like to use a number 7. So this one is number 7, 10 millimeters. And I just go through and kind of give it the texture that I want. And you can do this with any gouge really, and any combination of gouges. So you can do this and then get like a number 11 and give it some deeper veins, you know, kind of your choice really. But I find that this number 7 is just the right amount of texture that I need. This is good for catching those dry brushes because, as you can see on this one, the dry brush kind of gets all of those high points and gives it a little bit of extra stuff for that white to catch on there. So if you're really going for kind of a snowy, dusty effect, this is excellent for that. But don't let it get away from you, because this guy will definitely dig in and go straight to China. Especially if you have these file ones. These come super sharp right out of the box. Not their knives though. Their knives are, well, I can't say too much about them because I really only have one of them. But the gouges come super sharp right out of the box. Thankfully so, because to sharpen one of these gouges is, you know, takes some confidence. Really. These are among the more expensive tools that I own. Well, carving tools, that is. When you get to this bottom section, sometimes you have to invert the carving and kind of change the way that you're using the tool. So this is perfectly acceptable and offers me a whole lot of control. I'm even using my left thumb to keep the gouge from slipping too much. Now just come back and clean anything up that you need to. Okay, so it's good to have a brush on hand. I did not bring my brush to this carving expedition, unfortunately. I think that's nearly done. Okay, now you can notice how I did not do the stump. I did not gouge the stump just so it has a little bit different contrast in texture. I just left it with straight knife cuts, which, you know, that's my choice. You can do as you wish. And then of course on the back, go ahead and scallop it. This guy, you can see I had another project drawn on there, so we'll go ahead and scallop it. So using that same number 7, pay attention to the grain, so it looks like we chose the right direction. Sometimes when you start to do this, you'll realize that you have a lot of tear out. You'll say, shucks, it's either my tool that's not sharp, or the likely answer that it's the wood, it's not me. So I'm usually going in the wrong direction. So you can do a quick test by just turning the piece around. So let's see if it tears out. Yep, look at that. First one tore out. So the way to fix that when you get to this section is to just use your reverse gouging. So like that. Yep. Okay, there it is. And there is one 2-inch Christmas tree. Hope you guys enjoy and create a whole bunch of these guys, because Christmas is coming.